She lived in a crumbling cottage on the edge of a vast forest, nurturing a wolf pup that would grow beyond anyone's wildest imagination. No one foresaw how their bond would lead to a final, jaw-dropping act after her death, a moment that defied nature's boundaries. On a secluded strip of land by the old pine forest, rumors often swirled about an elderly woman named Agatha. Locals whispered that she dwelled alone among the towering pines, living on a modest pension and the occasional kindness of neighbors. Her home, a tumble-down cottage with a crooked chimney, stood as a testament to years of quiet independence. Many avoided the area altogether, half remembering superstitions about wild animals roaming those woods. Everything changed one winter when a villager reported spotting Agatha accompanied by a small, scruffy wolf pup, hardly bigger than a house cat. The pup's bright yellow eyes, so characteristic of wolves, shocked passers-by. How could a frail old woman keep a wild creature as a companion? Some predicted disaster, while others wondered if pity or loneliness drove her to care for the orphaned pup. Despite the murmurs, Agatha persisted in raising the wolf, calling him Silver for his sleek, silvery fur. Over the years, Silver grew at an astonishing rate. Villagers glimpsed him bounding after Agatha on her rare trips to the market, looming so large that even dogs avoided crossing his path. Though many remained fearful, no reports arose of Silver showing aggression, only unwavering loyalty to his aged caretaker. When townsfolk dared to approach, they'd see a massive wolf standing protectively by her side, ears perked, gaze watchful but not menacing. In hushed tones, people admitted a strange fascination with this unlikely pair, a bent-back old woman forging a bond with a beast known for its primal instincts. Then, one autumn, the unthinkable happened. Agatha passed away quietly in her sleep, leaving behind her beloved wolf, an animal of immense size and unknown temperament. While neighbors prepared a modest funeral, they also fretted over what would become of Silver. Had her presence alone kept his wildness at bay? No one imagined that his next act, sparked by a grief too large for words, would shake the entire village to its core, revealing a devotion that transcended the line between human love and the call of the wild. When Agatha first discovered the wolf pup, she had been gathering fallen branches in the forest, keen to stockpile firewood for the harsh winter. A faint yowl had drawn her to a withered tree stump where a tiny ball of trembling fur cried out, half covered in snow. Agatha's heart clenched at the sight, a creature likely orphaned and too young to survive alone. Though her neighbors would have scoffed, calling it madness to adopt a wolf, she couldn't turn away from those pleading eyes. Carrying him back to her cottage, she laid the pup by the hearth, feeding him warmed goat's milk from a shallow dish. The pup responded with fragile trust, his thin tail attempting a wag. Agatha had seen enough winters to know the gravity of rearing a wild animal, yet something about the pup's vulnerability mirrored her own solitude. Two kindred souls, overshadowed by a world that rarely made room for the weak. As weeks turned to months, the pup, christened Silver, recovered his strength. Agatha fashioned simple bedding from old blankets and introduced him to a schedule of regular meals. Scraps of leftover stew, occasional bits of rabbit or fish, the pup devoured food with relentless hunger, his limbs growing with uncanny speed. Despite warnings, she never tethered him outside. Instead, she coaxed him gently to accept her presence, brushing his fur and tending to minor cuts he picked up rummaging near brambles. Each little sign of affection the wolf returned, like softly placing a paw on her knee, eased the loneliness in Agatha's chest. Meanwhile, her nearest neighbor, a reserved farmer named Tobias, observed the changes at the cottage from afar. Once, while delivering a bag of potatoes, he spotted Silver curled near Agatha's rocking chair, head on her lap. Alarmed by the sheer size of the beast, Tobias offered to help rehome Silver to a nearby shelter that sometimes took exotic or wild animals. Agatha refused politely but firmly. "He's my family," she said. "We both have no one else." Tobias left, unsettled but not wanting to meddle further. During her occasional market visits to town, Agatha would navigate the dusty streets with Silver faithfully trailing behind. The wolf's presence unnerved shopkeepers, who eyed his massive form warily, hands twitching near broom handles or anything that might serve as a weapon if the beast lunged. But Silver never gave cause for alarm, merely observing the bustle with silent intensity. Over time, some softened enough to offer scraps of meat or bones, surprised at Silver's calm demeanor. Others, however, whispered rumors about the day the wolf's primal instincts would surface, dooming his elderly keeper. Through each season, the pair's bond deepened. At times, Silver roamed the edges of the forest, returning at dusk with a deer leg or a brace of grouse, which he dropped at Agatha's feet as if offering tribute. She'd pat his head, murmuring gratitude, though she seldom ate much game. Instead, she carefully cleaned and stored what she could, sometimes trading the meat in exchange for supplies from Tobias. In such acts, the village recognized Silver's predatory strength but also marveled at his devotion. No mere pet, but a partner in their meager survival. Yet, as the years passed, Agatha's health declined. A stooped back, arthritic joints, and tired eyes made even routine chores a challenge. Silver, now a full-grown wolf of startling size, took on an almost guardian-like role. He'd stand watch in the yard, regal as a sentinel, ensuring no stray fox or menacing critter threatened his mistress. Neighbors who dared approach the cottage found themselves met by a towering figure of fur and fangs, silently warning them to keep their distance unless they meant no harm. Behind closed doors, Agatha cherished the companionship that had staved off her isolation. She read aloud from old storybooks, her shaky voice weaving tales of knights, mythical beasts, and forests just as wild as their own. Sometimes, she'd imagine Silver understood every word, for he'd rest his head on her lap, ears flicking at her voice's cadence. Despite her outward calm, a growing worry gnawed at Agatha, Silver's future if she was no longer around to guide him. She'd heard some townsfolk call him a monster behind her back, believing he'd become a threat the moment she died. Late at night, by lantern light, she would pray softly, hoping that if her time came, Silver would find refuge, not a lynch mob. She considered writing letters to distant relatives or to an animal sanctuary, but her limited resources and frail energy often waylaid such plans. Eventually, winter arrived in full force, winds howling across the forest canopy, snow piling high around the crooked cottage. Agatha coughed more frequently, her face drawn and pale. Silver hovered near her, occasionally nudging her blankets into place or letting out a low, mournful whine at her escalating frailty. One bitter evening, as she shivered despite the blazing hearth, Agatha gently touched Silver's muzzle, eyes brimming with both gratitude and sorrow. "You've kept me alive, you know," she whispered, her voice trembling. Silver pressed closer, as if trying to warm her with his own body. Unbeknownst to neighbors who hardly saw her these days, Agatha sensed her end was close. She found solace in the fact that Silver was no longer the tiny pup she'd rescued. He was a majestic creature, capable of survival, if only the villagers and their superstitions would spare him. In the silent tension of that final winter, man and beast clung to a bond that transcended any notion of predator or caretaker, forging a partnership built on mutual dependence and fierce love. By the time the snow reached the windowsills, the question that lingered in the frosty air was how Silver would react if Agatha left him behind. Her fear wasn't for herself anymore but for the future of the giant wolf she considered her only family. In that hush before the storm, no one in town could have predicted the staggering act that would unfold upon Agatha's passing, a display of loyalty so profound it would leave them speechless, rethinking every prejudice they'd harbored toward the old woman and her towering companion. As the frost-laden winter held the forest in its silent grip, Agatha's health deteriorated more sharply than anyone had expected. Her breath came in labored wheezes, and days passed where she never left the old rocking chair by the fire. Silver, the giant wolf whose strength and presence had grown with each passing season, rarely strayed from her side. Even when hunger pangs tugged at his belly, he only ventured out briefly, returning swiftly with whatever small game he could find. It was as if his wild instincts had shifted to accommodate this new reality. Protecting Agatha in her twilight was more important than roaming far. Sensing that Agatha might soon require more assistance than he could provide alone, Tobias, the neighboring farmer, tentatively began visiting the cottage. Though apprehensive about Silver's sheer size and lupin stare, he forced himself past the wolf's watchful scrutiny. Agatha's grateful smile each time Tobias set down a basket of bread or fresh milk reminded him that compassion wasn't just for the able-bodied. Watching the wolf follow Agatha's every gesture with worried eyes unsettled him, yet also sparked a begrudging respect. "He acts more like a devoted hound than a beast," he once told his wife. "But I still can't say I trust him completely." Yet, for all Tobias's visits and silent prayers, Agatha's vigor dimmed. On a frigid morning, she finally confided in him, a broken whisper as she lay in bed, the wolf at her feet. "I know I don't have much time," she confessed, her voice weak. "My greatest fear is not death, but what becomes of Silver when I'm gone." Moved by her plea, Tobias promised he would see to it the wolf was treated fairly, though he privately doubted how the village would react. Many still viewed Silver as a ticking menace. A wolf, especially one so large, had no place in their quiet settlement. If rumor spread that Agatha was gone, would they rally to chase Silver away, or worse? Meanwhile, Lily, a curious teenager from town, learned of Agatha's failing health through gossip at the local bakery. Intrigued by stories of a wolf that defied nature's usual boundaries, she resolved to visit one afternoon, ignoring her mother's warnings. Lily ventured down the snow-packed road to the crooked cottage. As she approached, the wolf emerged from behind a drift, towering and silent. Lily's heart raced, she'd never been this close to a creature so formidable. Yet, the wolf merely stood, ears pricked, tail low in cautious curiosity. Sensing no threat in the girl, Silver allowed her to knock on the door unchallenged. Agatha, coughing into a threadbare blanket, beckoned Lily in with a gentle wave. Over the next hour, Lily helped Tobias tidy the cluttered living space and brew a mild tea that Dr. Braxton had recommended. The wolf watched closely but remained calm, as though accepting Lily as part of the small circle of kindness surrounding his ailing companion. Lily's eyes often drifted to Silver's mesmerizing stare, both captivated and uneasy. Later, she confided in her friends that she'd never felt such a profound aura from any creature, describing it as, like he knows everything we're feeling. As Agatha's strength waned, her bond with Silver appeared to intensify. Some nights, villagers reported hearing low, mournful howls from the direction of her cottage, as if the wolf sang lullabies to ease her pain. In return, Agatha patted his colossal head, whispering endearments that no one else would ever comprehend. "You saved me from loneliness," she told him once, her voice trembling. "And I tried to save you from the cold. We've done well, haven't we?" The wolf would respond with a gentle nudge, laying his head on her lap. Despite such tender moments, the tension in the village escalated. Whispers circulated about what might happen if, when, Agatha passed. Some insisted Silver should be put down for public safety, citing age-old fears about wolves turning on humans. Others, swayed by Tobias's reluctant praise and Lily's enthusiastic stories, argued that the wolf displayed more loyalty than some domestic dogs. Factions formed, each passionately certain of their stance. Unbeknownst to them, a silent clock ticked down to Agatha's final breaths, rendering their debates heartbreakingly moot. One bitterly cold night, the first starless sky in weeks, Agatha slipped away in her sleep. Tobias found her the next morning, having come by to deliver warm soup. She lay peacefully under a worn quilt, as if merely dozing, while Silver stood guard at the bedside. Something in the wolf's posture, a droop of his shoulders, the desolate gleam in his eyes, spoke of a heart-wrenching grief beyond mere animal instinct. Tobias, his voice catching, announced her passing to the few assembled neighbors who gathered outside. Upon hearing the news, they entered the cottage with caution, half expecting the wolf to lunge. Instead, they saw him pressed against the bed, muzzle resting near Agatha's cold hand. In the days that followed, the village prepared a modest funeral. Only a handful attended the burial, to keep watch over the coffin and the ceremony. Silver sat at a distance, silent, massive eyes locked on the proceedings, as if expecting to see Agatha rise once more. Some were unnerved by his presence, others, quietly moved by the display of devotion. When the coffin was finally lowered into the frozen ground, the wolf loosed a long, sorrowful howl that echoed across the snow-blanketed fields, making every spine tingle. Even those who feared him felt tears well up at the raw sorrow in that cry. At first, they expected the wolf to wander off, returning to the forest from which he came. Yet, Silver remained, circling the fresh grave, refusing to leave. A wave of uncertainty swept through the village. Should they chase him away? Forcibly capture him for a distant sanctuary? Or respect his mourning? Lily, tears streaking her cheeks, stood vigil beside Tobias, watching in awe as Silver lay at the foot of the grave, as though he might keep Agatha company in death just as he had in life. Thus, at the height of this communal grief and debate, the stage was set for the wolf's most astonishing act, a gesture so profound and unexpected that it would challenge every assumption about a wild animal's capacity for love and loyalty. In the hush of that winter cemetery, those who had doubted Agatha's bond with Silver came face to face with the unthinkable. The giant wolf had not only lost his only friend but now grappled with a sorrow that spoke of true devotion, bridging a gap between species that no one had imagined could be crossed. The question on every trembling lip was the same: what would the wolf do next? In the days following Agatha's burial, the village found itself in the grip of a collective unease. Neighbors exchanged uneasy glances each time they passed the simple wooden cross marking her grave. On the outskirts of the small cemetery, perched a few yards away, Silver, the giant wolf, kept a silent, unwavering vigil from dawn till dusk, and often through the night. He refused to leave the site, regardless of the biting cold or drifting snow. Some villagers, moved by the display of loyalty, left scraps of meat or bowls of water nearby. Others warned it was too dangerous to let a wild predator roam freely, especially one grieving and potentially unpredictable. As a gentle snowfall dusted the graves one afternoon, Lily ventured to the cemetery with a bag of leftovers and a nervous heart. She expected to see Silver coiled in sorrow, his massive form half buried in the snow. Indeed, there he was, fur ruffled by the wind, muzzle resting on his paws, gaze never straying from Agatha's final resting place. His silent mourning struck Lily with a mix of awe and pity. Approaching slowly, she offered him a piece of cooked chicken. Silver stared at her, then let out a low, throaty whine. Instead of devouring the food, he nudged it aside, as if nothing mattered in the wake of Agatha's absence. A pang gripped Lily's chest. If he wouldn't eat, how long before hunger or heartbreak claimed him? Word of Silver's refusal to move from the grave soon circulated around town, prompting debates about how to intervene. Tobias, the farmer who'd often brought groceries to Agatha, argued for capturing the wolf and relocating him to a sanctuary far from the village. He's pining away, he reasoned, shaking his head in concern. We can't let him starve out there. Others insisted that forcibly removing him was both dangerous and cruel. Dr. Braxton, who had once visited Agatha's cottage, proposed a gentler approach, gradual coaxing with food and calm voices, hoping to lure Silver to warmer quarters. But each attempt at persuasion proved futile. The wolf remained steadfast, rejecting all efforts to lead him from the grave. Amid this standstill, the first major twist took hold. A group of local youths, skeptical about the wolf's supposed gentleness, planned to scare Silver off themselves. Late one night, they arrived at the cemetery, armed with flashlights and the bravado of teenage daring. Their intention was to spook the wolf into fleeing, perhaps to prove themselves or quell their own fears. Yet, as they advanced, hollering and shining beams of light at the imposing silhouette, the air around them seemed to grow electric. Silver rose onto all fours, muscles coiled, fangs glinting in the flicker of moonlight. A menacing growl rumbled in his chest, a sound so deep it reverberated through the cold ground beneath their feet. The youths froze in terror. Though none were physically harmed, the wolf's warning was unmistakable. They scattered, adrenaline surging, stumbling back to the village with tales of an enormous demon glaring them down. The next morning, rumors spread like wildfire. Some claimed the wolf was possessed by Agatha's spirit, protecting her grave from trespassers. Others insisted it was merely an animal dangerously fixated on a spot that reeked of human scent. Tobias, upon hearing of the boys' failed stunt, chastised their recklessness but took the incident as proof that action was needed. Silver, in his grief, might lash out more severely next time. The second revelation that followed was even more startling. A traveling peddler, who'd paused at the cemetery out of curiosity, reported witnessing the wolf in the early pre-dawn hours. According to the peddler, Silver had been seen gently pawing at the soil of Agatha's grave, as though attempting to excavate it. He wasn't trying to unearth her, the peddler insisted, his tone half fearful, half awed. But more like, "I don't know, tidying the site. Feels like madness, but that's what it looked like." The mental image of a wolf painstakingly smoothing over the earth, as if paying final respects, sent shivers through those who heard the tale. To some, it was a powerful testament to the bond between woman and beast. To others, it confirmed the wolf had strayed into unnatural territory, a threat that defied normal wildlife behavior. Agitated villagers convened a somber meeting in the local church hall. Tension filled the modest space, heated whispers echoing off whitewashed walls. Some demanded immediate action to drive the wolf away, reasoning that an animal which mourned a human grave was a sign of an unnatural bond that could only end in violence. A few voices, including Lily's, rose in protest, insisting that Silver's loyalty was neither dark magic nor an omen, but a reflection of genuine affection. Still, fear held sway over many, stirring them to advocate for drastic measures. At the heart of this debate, Lily's father found himself caught between paternal caution and admiration for the wolf's devotion. While he worried about Lily's well-being, he couldn't deny that Silver's refusal to abandon Agatha's grave conveyed an otherworldly sincerity. Finally, after an hour of heated arguments, Dr. Braxton stood and proposed a compromise. "Give me and a few volunteers a chance to monitor the wolf," she said. "See if we can guide him toward a safer environment, or at least ensure he's fed and not aggressive." Her plea resonated with those who disliked the notion of killing or capturing the wolf but remained uneasy about leaving him at a gravesite. Thus, over the next week, a rotating group, Tobias among them, attempted to keep vigil at a distance. They brought water and meat, watching from behind weathered headstones. Each time they approached within a few yards of the grave, Silver would rise, hackles raised. Though he rarely bared his teeth, it was as if he tolerated their presence only so long as they didn't attempt to displace him. The caretaker of the cemetery, an elderly man who'd known Agatha in her younger days, described the wolf's silent guardianship as both the saddest and most beautiful sight I've ever witnessed. And it was in that swirl of tragic beauty and looming dread that the stage was set for Silver's ultimate, unforeseen act. The village, divided by caution and wonder, unwittingly braced for the moment when the wolf's grieving devotion would manifest in a final, jaw-dropping display, an act that would crystallize Agatha's faith in his gentle spirit, redefine how they perceived the fierce predator's nature, and echo through the region's folklore for generations to come. Each day that Silver, Agatha's giant wolf, remained at her gravesite seemed to deepen the townspeople's emotional turmoil. Those who favored mercy found their hearts ache at the sight of the majestic creature standing sentinel in the midst of the headstones, an unwavering emblem of devotion. Those who leaned toward suspicion whispered of danger and bad omens, their unease magnified by the wolf's uncanny behavior. And those few caught in the middle, like Lily's father or the local farmer, Tobias, felt the weight of indecision pressing ever harder. Agatha's funeral had been modest and quiet, the townsfolk gathering in small clusters after the service to speak in hushed tones about the unusual circumstances. Not a day passed without fresh speculation. Why did the wolf linger, refusing food or shelter unless it was placed right at the gravesite? Some insisted it was a testament to the unbreakable bond Agatha had forged with the beast. Others declared it a sign of the wolf's unnatural attachment, heralding trouble. As the snows persisted and the year's coldest night set in, Lily took it upon herself to bring a daily offering of warm scraps, hoping Silver might relinquish his vigil for at least a few minutes. With every visit, her eyes roamed the silent cemetery, half fearing a confrontation with townsfolk who disapproved of her kindness. Yet, she pressed on, ignoring the sidelong glances. Each time, Silver remained impassive, only ever acknowledging Lily with a soft tilt of his colossal head. On rare occasions, he accepted a morsel from her hand, swallowing it silently before resuming his watch. Lily's father, torn between paternal caution and a growing respect for his daughter's empathy, found himself returning to the gravesite as well. While he never dared approach as closely as Lily did, he stood at a respectful distance, arms crossed, mind swirling with conflicting thoughts. If the wolf's vigil persists indefinitely, he muttered to Tobias one evening, the two men huddled behind a row of evergreens to avoid unsettling Silver, what's the endgame? It can't stay there forever. And yet, Tobias replied, his voice low, if we force him away, we risk provoking him, or destroying something that's sacred. Tobias, who had once vehemently argued for capturing Silver and shipping him off to a sanctuary, looked on with a reluctant awe. I'll admit, he said slowly, I've never seen an animal grieve like this. It's as if he's guarding her even beyond death. A hush fell between them, the wind carrying a soft whistle across the tombstones. The father merely nodded, a pensive look in his eyes. Meanwhile, Miss Hawkins, ever the journalist, observed the unfolding situation with a mix of fascination and caution. She recognized the potential for a powerful human interest story that could resonate far beyond their small town. Yet, she also understood the delicate tightrope everyone walked. The slightest move to sensationalize the wolf's vigil might spark a backlash, inciting those who believed a giant predator had no place among them. Miss Hawkins wrote drafts of an article titled, When a Wolf Mourns, A Love Beyond Life, but refrained from publication, aware that stirring up more scrutiny could endanger Silver's precarious acceptance. Across the town, reactions varied wildly. Some residents, moved by the wolf's loyalty, began leaving small tributes near Agatha's grave, a jar of lavender to mask the scent of fresh earth, a candle to warm the frigid nights. Others voiced anger, complaining to local officials that the cemetery was under siege by a giant wolf, that it was disrespectful to the memories of their own departed. The pastor, who oversaw the cemetery, a gentleman named Father Everett, found himself caught in a moral quandary. Is it not a reflection of God's creation, he asked during a Sunday sermon, his voice echoing off the church's rafters, that this creature mourns? Perhaps we should open our hearts rather than shun him. His words, earnest though they were, only stoked the village's polarization. Amid these tensions, Dr. Braxton quietly coordinated with a conservation officer from a nearby district, hoping to find a balanced solution, a place that respected the wolf's autonomy but guarded against conflict with townspeople. The officer, upon hearing the story, expressed both skepticism and intrigue. A wolf that refuses to leave a grave is, well, let's just say, not typical behavior, he remarked. If I come out there to capture him, it might do more harm than good. Perhaps we should let him be a while longer. With no immediate threat of aggression from Silver, the officer saw no pressing need for removal, provided the townsfolk could exercise patience. One frosty dusk, as Lily approached with a tin of scraps, she found Silver huddled closer to Agatha's headstone than ever before. Concerned, she inched nearer, noticing the wolf's labored breathing and unfocused eyes. For a terrifying moment, she feared he might be wounded or ill. Summoning her courage, she reached out, hand trembling. Silver stirred and pressed his muzzle to her palm, a quiet whimper escaping his throat. The raw sorrow reflected in his gaze, mirroring Lily's own heartbreak, almost broke her resolve. When she softly called his name, he lowered his head onto the snow, as though conceding to a grief that was slowly draining his own will to live. Witnessing this, Lily's eyes swam with tears. She realized that while Silver's presence honored Agatha's memory, it also risked his own survival. The winter nights were brutal, and he refused to hunt or leave the grave for more than a few minutes, as if abandoning his vigil would betray the bond they'd shared. "You can't die here," she whispered, her voice cracking with emotion. "You can't leave her proud memory stained by losing yourself." In that tender confession, Lily embraced the emotional dilemma faced by everyone in town, respecting the wolf's unprecedented love while preventing it from spiraling into a self-imposed death sentence. Looking on from afar, Lily's father and Tobias exchanged grim nods. "The dog has grown gaunt," the father murmured to Tobias. "More subdued. Even its fur, which once gleamed with a wild sheen, looks dull under the pale sky." "We need to do something," Tobias replied, his lips set in a determined line. "Or he'll waste away out here." Whether they led Silver to a safer haven or orchestrated a gentle intervention, time was running short. Agatha's passing had ignited a new trial, the test of how much compassion and humility a community could muster for an animal they hardly understood. Thus, as the nights grew longer and the final hush settled over the cemetery's rows of headstones, the stage was set for the wolf's eventual decision, or fate. A climax born of unwavering devotion and dire necessity. For in the silent tears of a child and the anxious hearts of neighbors, a unified question loomed: could they save Silver from his own grief, or would the final testament of Agatha's legacy be a wolf's demise upon her frozen grave? A bitter wind swept across the cemetery hill, carrying fresh snow crystals that sparkled under a pale sun. Although the townspeople were still divided over Silver's unwavering presence at Agatha's grave, new complications arose that threatened to intensify the entire situation. These subplots, weaving around the central drama of a wolf's mourning, deepened the emotional stakes for everyone involved. The first complication arrived one frosty morning in the form of a dusty black SUV that rumbled into town and parked by the local diner. Out stepped a severe-looking woman in a thick parka, Dana Clean, a representative from a regional wildlife agency. Word of a giant wolf haunting a grave had traveled through back channels, spurring enough curiosity and concern for the agency to dispatch someone to assess the matter. Dana, accompanied by her associate, methodically gathered statements from the villagers. She listened in polite silence as they relayed the story of how Agatha had raised Silver from a pup, how the wolf now refused to leave her side in death, and how half the town wanted to force the beast away while the other half watched in awe. Making careful notes, she offered little reaction, though her eyes betrayed a critical mind piecing together the puzzle. Meanwhile, Lily, who had become Silver's steadfast ally, grew increasingly anxious about the whispers of official intervention. Would the wildlife agent decide Silver posed a public danger and insist on capturing, or euthanizing, him? The mere thought filled Lily with dread. She tried to convey Silver's gentleness to Dana. "He's not violent," she insisted. He's just hurting." Dana listened, her face neutral, politely thanking Lily for her input. But the woman's measured detachment reminded Lily of doctors making cold, clinical decisions, numbers over compassion. Simultaneously, Miss Hawkins, the journalist, sensed an opportunity to broaden her coverage. She'd been quietly documenting Silver's vigil, capturing the poignant image of a massive wolf braving the elements to remain near Agatha's resting place. Hearing of Dana's presence, Miss Hawkins arranged an interview, hoping an official perspective might add weight to her evolving article. Dana politely demurred, explaining she'd first file a report to her superiors. The journalist, while disappointed, remained undeterred, continuing to gather testimonies from neighbors. Some older residents revealed a surprising detail: Agatha had once been a midwife and caretaker for various orphans, human and animal alike. This new information explained her willingness to adopt Silver, but it also roused another subplot: rumors that Agatha had saved more than one wolf in her youth, forging an almost mystic connection with forest creatures. While the village observed these unfolding stories, a second challenge appeared in the form of unscrupulous opportunists. Not everyone who heard about a giant, reportedly tame wolf reacted with compassion. A few strangers began drifting through town, driving battered trucks and asking probing questions about Silver's exact location and condition. Lily's father noticed one of these men loitering near the cemetery, feigning interest in the tombstones but clearly eyeing the wolf from a distance. An old rumor suggested that wealthy collectors would pay handsomely for exotic animals, or their hides. Fear simmered that if word spread too widely, someone might attempt to capture Silver for profit. Tobias, the farmer, took it upon himself to keep an unofficial watch, recruiting a handful of concerned neighbors who, like Lily, believed Silver deserved protection. They formed a loose schedule for standing guard near the grave after dusk, ensuring no one harassed the wolf under cover of night. While some found the arrangement comforting, others worried it could provoke confrontation with any potential poachers or criminals. Dr. Braxton, aware of the rising tension, offered medical kits and advice on avoiding confrontation. If they come for him, she warned, don't engage. Call the ranger, call the authorities. No life is worth losing in a vigilante scuffle. Amid these emergent plots, Lily juggled her own emotional challenges. Schoolwork piled up, though she found it hard to concentrate. Her dreams were invaded by images of Silver keening in the snow or Agatha's kind smile fading into darkness. The weight of it all pressed on her young shoulders, the desperate hope that Silver could survive both his grief and the mounting threats from outsiders. Periodically, Lily would confide in her father's comforting presence or Miss Hawkins's thoughtful ear. Yet, each time she confronted the silent, stoic figure of the wolf, she felt an unspoken plea in his eyes, protect me. Let me mourn. One afternoon, Miss Hawkins received a tip that a small protest was brewing in the town center. A handful of residents, unnerved by the wolf's unwavering guard over a public cemetery, were supposedly planning to demand the creature be removed by force if necessary. This group, led by a hard-edged local named Corwin, argued that the cemetery wasn't a place for wild animals. This is unnatural, Corwin declared. If we let it stay, who knows what might happen if it turns feral. Alarmed, Miss Hawkins rushed to the scene, capturing photos of protest signs reading, "Send the beast back," and "Cemetery for humans, not wolves." Lily's father, arriving soon after to keep an eye on the commotion, found himself in a heated exchange with Corwin, who accused him of enabling a potential threat. "We won't stand by until someone gets hurt," Corwin snapped, jabbing a finger in the father's face. In the swirl of arguments, Miss Hawkins noticed Dana Clean, the wildlife agent, observing from the fringes, arms folded, assessing the mood. After the confrontation simmered down, she approached Lily's father. "I'm filing my report tonight," she said in a clipped tone. "It'll include the recommendation that the wolf be relocated to a controlled facility, if it can't be coaxed away voluntarily." Her announcement sent a wave of dread through Lily, who overheard. Could a forced transfer become a reality, tearing Silver away from the only home he'd known, even if it was now just a grave? Through these mounting challenges, tensions within the community, outsiders with questionable motives, and government scrutiny, an uneasy countdown began. Every new development ratcheted the emotional stakes higher, drawing Lily, her father, Tobias, Miss Hawkins, and Dr. Braxton deeper into Silver's fate. Meanwhile, the wolf itself, looming at Agatha's final resting place day and night, remained a silent riddle. Behind its unwavering watch, a fierce love and sorrow burned. But how long could that flame endure in the face of so much opposition? It was clear, the moment of reckoning approached, a final test of compassion and courage that would not only decide Silver's future but also reveal the truest nature of human hearts. Late one afternoon, a peculiar hush enveloped the cemetery. The wind, which had long howled among the headstones, subsided into a light breeze. Townspeople going about their chores paused, noticing an odd stillness in the air, like the calm before a storm. At Agatha's grave, Silver remained as ever, unmoving, refusing to abandon his vigil. Snow continued to cling to his fur, but he scarcely shook it off, as if dismissing any thought of comfort. Lily arrived, carefully setting down a bowl of lukewarm stew. She tried coaxing him to eat, but the wolf barely acknowledged her offering. Amid this static tension, a new element of intrigue emerged. A stranger arrived in the village, introducing himself at the local inn as Gideon Roy, a self-proclaimed wolf behavior expert. Word of the giant wolf's peculiar morning had reached his ears, and he came offering services to handle the matter. Though he claimed no official wildlife credentials, Gideon's confident demeanor caught the attention of those seeking quick solutions. He promised a gentle removal of the wolf, if the townsfolk desired, though he was vague about the methods he'd employ or where Silver might end up. Sensing an opportunity to rid themselves of a perceived threat, the faction led by Corwin, who had previously tried to rally a protest, warmed to Gideon's pitch. They argued that leaving a wild predator unrestrained was too risky, especially near a public resting place for the dead. Lily's father, growing suspicious of Gideon, spoke privately with Tobias and Miss Hawkins. What if this so-called expert is just another profiteer, he warned, looking to exploit Silver. Recalling the earlier rumors of unscrupulous individuals wanting rare animals for personal gain, Miss Hawkins dug into Gideon's background, uncovering only a patchwork of references, occasional stints at small zoos, a handful of questionable blog articles about exotic animal handling. Nothing solid. Nothing reputable. He's either a con man, she concluded, or a dangerously untrained meddler. Urging caution, Dana Clean, the wildlife agent, also took note of Gideon's arrival. When he attempted to meet with her, describing how he'd humanely relocate that overgrown wolf, she pressed him for permits and references. Flustered, Gideon sidestepped her questions. His refusal to provide verifiable credentials only deepened her mistrust. However, Corwin and his allies continued to defend Gideon's offer, pressuring Dana to let him take care of the problem. The wildlife agent, caught between official protocols and local demands, found her patience wearing thin. Each time she tried to finalize her report, new arguments burst forth, stalling any clear resolution. Meanwhile, Lily observed these swirling tensions with growing dismay. Each day, the wolf's gaunt frame and weary eyes reminded her that time was short. If Silver continued this starved vigil, his life would hang by a thread, regardless of Gideon's schemes or the outcome of Dana's report. In quiet moments, Lily whispered to the wolf about memories of Agatha, how the old woman had shown kindness to stray cats and even nursed a wounded fox back to health many winters ago. She wouldn't want you to die here, Lily murmured, tears smudging her cheeks. Yet, Silver only gazed past her, trapped in his sorrow. A new wave of fear rippled through the village and Corwin and a few followers marched to the cemetery one crisp morning, Gideon in tow. They carried nets, ropes, and tranquilizer darts, purchased online, rumor said, with the apparent intent to subdue the wolf by force. A small crowd gathered to watch from afar, uncertain whether to intervene or let events unfold. Lily's father, rushing to the scene upon hearing the commotion, found Lily already there, standing protectively between the men and Silver. Her heart hammered as she spread her arms wide. "Don't do this," she shouted, her voice cracking. Knowing that the slightest provocation might trigger violence from either the wolf or the fearful men, Gideon stepped forward, his posture stiff with self-importance. "Step aside, child," he demanded. "For this wolf is a danger and needs professional handling." Lily's father quickly positioned himself beside his daughter, ignoring Gideon's glare. At that precarious moment, the wolf lifted its head, ears flattened, issuing a guttural growl. The sound was low, throbbing, a caution more than an attack. Corwin, spooked, raised a net, but Lily's father barked, "Stop. Let Dana Clean decide." Caught in a standoff, Gideon hesitated. Miss Hawkins appeared, camera ready, capturing the tense scene. Dana Clean, who had rushed over upon hearing of the confrontation, arrived with a scowl. Her stern voice cut the air. "No one acts without authority here," she said, turning to Gideon, her expression challenging. "Unless you have an official permit for wildlife capture, you're trespassing on a cemetery and endangering the community." Flushed with embarrassment, Gideon tried to protest but was quickly drowned out by the townsfolk's murmurs. Realizing his plan to act unilaterally might fail under public scrutiny, Gideon lowered his gear, casting Corwin a frustrated glance. In that breath of respite, Lily crouched beside Silver again, tears of relief streaming. The wolf, though trembling with tension, didn't lash out. He simply closed his eyes, as though exhausted by this perpetual siege. The crowd, once bristling with fear, now seemed transfixed by a scene of quiet heartbreak. Even Corwin's anger softened under the wolf's palpable despair, though pride prevented him from admitting it openly. So, the confrontation ended in a draw, no forced removal, no settled future for Silver. Yet, a fresh wave of anxiety hit the village. The escalation signaled that more attempts might follow unless a definitive solution emerged. In the aftermath, Dana took Lily's father aside. "I'm finalizing my report by tomorrow," she told him quietly. "It'll likely advise sedation and relocation. But if the public outcry is loud enough, or if the sanctuary approach fails..." She trailed off, leaving the grim alternative unspoken. That evening, Lily's father and Tobias, joined by a few sympathetic townsfolk, resumed night watch near the cemetery. Their presence deterred any further attempts by Gideon or Corwin's followers. Still, the wolf grew visibly weaker, barely touching the food Lily offered. Each time she gazed into his eyes, she sensed a fading light, as though his spirit clung to Agatha's memory more than to his own survival. In that hush of the frosty moonlight, it became painfully clear that some climax was inevitable. The village had run out of half-measures, and the wolf, poised between life and death, might force them all to witness an act that would forever reshape how they saw the bond between human and beast. Gray clouds loomed over the cemetery, threatening another wave of snow that would likely blanket the headstones, and Silver, in another icy coat. Despite Dana Clean's warning that she'd finalize her report soon, no immediate action had been taken against the wolf. The villagers found themselves mired in a tense stalemate. Gideon, the self-styled wolf expert, still lurked in town, waiting for another chance to prove himself, while Corwin's faction simmered with frustration, demanding a decisive solution. Meanwhile, Lily, her father, Tobias, Miss Hawkins, and a small circle of empathetic onlookers maintained a near-constant watch, ensuring no one else attempted to forcibly remove or harm Silver. Into this precarious balance came a faint glimmer of hope from an unexpected source, a distant wildlife sanctuary that specialized in large canids. Miss Hawkins, wielding her network of contacts, managed to reach an old colleague who confirmed the sanctuary had space for one more wolf, if the wolf could be safely transported, and if the facility's director believed it was in the animal's best interest. Eager to find a gentle resolution, Miss Hawkins relayed the news to Lily and her father. "They'll send a trained handler with proper sedation equipment," she explained. "No shady business, no profiteering like Gideon's suspect methods. It could be the best chance for Silver to recover from his grief in a protected environment." Lily's eyes lit up, torn between relief and a nagging sadness. "But what if he wants to stay here by Agatha?" she asked. "Would he hate us for taking him away?" The father laid a comforting hand on her shoulder, acknowledging the weight of her question. "Sometimes, protecting someone means doing what they can't understand," he said softly, glancing at the wolf's stoic figure through the cottage window. "He's dying out there, Lily. We can't let him." News of a possible sanctuary offer spread quickly. Some townsfolk welcomed it, at last, a humane approach, they murmured, while others pointed out that forcibly moving a wild creature still felt akin to betrayal. Gideon sniffed at the notion of letting outsiders step in, muttering darkly that he could do the job better and faster. Corwin's clique remained distrustful of any plan that didn't ensure the wolf's permanent absence, muttering about predators returning to haunt us. Nonetheless, a date was tentatively set for the sanctuary handler to arrive and assess the situation. During these anxious days, Lily spent more time with Silver than ever, sneaking out to the cemetery before school, bundling herself in extra layers to stand guard against the bitter cold. Occasionally, she'd read aloud from old storybooks, ones she imagined Agatha might have shared with Silver in the lonely cottage. Though the wolf seemed to pay no heed, she took comfort in the quiet ritual, convinced that on some level, he felt less alone. On one such morning, she noticed an older woman, Agatha's distant cousin, who turned up belatedly for the funeral, placing fresh flowers at the grave. Observing Lily's tender care for the wolf, the cousin wept softly. Agatha would be grateful, she whispered, stroking the wolf's head as it allowed the briefest contact. She always said love could tame even the fiercest hearts. Meanwhile, Rowan, Lily's father, wrestled with an unforeseen dilemma regarding the sanctuary's approach. Dr. Braxton cautioned him that sedating a wolf in such a frail emotional and physical state carried risks. If his body is weakened, she warned, the tranquilizer might complicate his vitals. But if we don't sedate him, transporting him safely could be impossible. He's still a wild beast at heart. Rowan grimaced, recalling the wolf's massive jaws and fierce protectiveness. He's known me, Lily, and a few others, he said. But a stranger poking him with a dart might provoke a final, desperate response. Miss Hawkins tried to reassure him, explaining that the sanctuary staff were experienced with traumatized canids. They've handled wolves rescued from deplorable conditions, she said. They understand heartbreak and stress better than most. If there's a place he might find peace, that's it. In her eyes, Rowan glimpsed a reflective sorrow that suggested she'd witnessed too many sad endings in her journalistic career. A flicker of determination ignited in him. If there was even a chance for Silver, he'd fight for it. High above, the leaden sky finally released its snow, flurries whipped around the grave, dusting Silver's fur in a layer of shimmering white. Dana Clean stood at a respectful distance, clipboard in hand. She watched the wolf for a long moment before approaching Rowan and Lily. I've decided, she began, her voice betraying a mix of relief and concern. I'm greenlighting the sanctuary's plan. We'll coordinate with them to transport the wolf out of town. I'm sorry if that disappoints you, Lily, but I believe it's the best outcome under the circumstances. Lily nodded, tearfully grateful yet pained. The father quietly thanked Dana, acknowledging her tough position. That evening, in a final complication, Gideon made a last push, cornering Lily's father outside the general store to offer his services, promising a more confidential removal. The father refused calmly but firmly, stating they would wait for the sanctuary's professional team. Gideon spat in disgust, calling them fools blinded by a monster. Miss Hawkins, who overheard, confronted him with her camera, capturing his heated rant. Realizing he'd lost public favor, Gideon stormed off into the swirling snow, leaving behind an unsettling sense of unfinished animosity. So, all the elements converged, a broken-hearted wolf clinging to its graveyard vigil, a village torn between fear and empathy, a legitimate sanctuary team on the horizon, and a self-appointed trapper seething over his thwarted ambitions. Tension spiraled upward as Lily's father lit a lantern on the porch, standing vigil through the night. In his chest churned a cocktail of relief, dread, and sorrow for the inevitable goodbye. Inside, Lily sat by the window, praying silently that Silver might understand when the time came. She refused to accept that a rescue mission would feel like betrayal. He saved me from apathy, she told herself, recalling the wolf's quiet grace and protective loyalty. Now, it's my turn to save him from despair. Amid the swirling winds and silent tombstones, the stage was set. The next few days would decide whether Silver's story ended with a gentle passage to a new beginning, or unraveled into tragedy at Agatha's snow-laden grave. In that fragile calm before the final act, each character braced for what was to come, an ultimate test of whether devotion could triumph over sorrow, and whether the wolf's heartbreak might yet transform into a miracle of survival and second chances. A fresh blanket of snow muffled the village streets, creating an odd stillness. In the cemetery, an eerie hush persisted, no footsteps, no murmured voices, just the towering wolf at Agatha's grave. Yet, behind this fragile silence, tensions climbed toward a breaking point. Villagers who sympathized with Silver continued to leave food and water at a respectful distance, while those uneasy with his presence became increasingly vocal, unsure how long they could wait for the sanctuary team. Many wondered if Silver would succumb to grief before help arrived. The biggest surge of unrest came when Gideon, still smarting from his rejection, began spreading rumors that the wolf had become vicious. He told anyone who'd listen that it's only a matter of time before that monster attacks a child, fueling anxiety. He claimed to have inside information that Silver had already bitten someone, a lie he circulated without proof. The rumor inflamed Corwin's small but fervent group, who organized a second protest at the cemetery gates. They held signs demanding, "Remove the wolf now," and "Wild beasts don't belong here." A few passers-by joined them out of fear or curiosity, forming a tense knot of people near the entrance. Lily and her father witnessed the gathering from a distance, hearts heavy. Leading them inside the cemetery was Miss Hawkins, camera slung over her shoulder, determined to document both sides. The protesters, spotting them, hollered warnings. "We won't stand idle while a predator lurks among our dead." Lily's father set his jaw, guiding her to keep moving. On approach, they found Silver standing vigil as ever, snow dusting his fur. The wolf's ears flicked at the distant commotion, but he remained at the grave, trembling with either cold or grief. A hush fell the moment Lily knelt beside the wolf, gently calling his name. Protesters fell silent, observing as the massive beast permitted her touch. The father spoke up, his voice tinged with frustration. "Look at him. He's not attacking anyone. He's mourning." Even some of Corwin's supporters hesitated, the scene clashing with their fears. Gideon, however, seized the moment to voice a challenge. "You're endangering that girl, letting her near a wolf," he shouted, pointing aggressively. Lily looked up, tears glinting. "He's never hurt me," she insisted. "He's only hurting himself staying here." Despite the tension, a ripple of movement stirred in the back of the crowd. Dana Clean, the wildlife agent, stepped forward, her gaze solemn. "I've just spoken with the sanctuary," she announced, her voice projecting calmly. "Their transport team can arrive tomorrow. If the town consents, they'll sedate the wolf humanely and take him to a protected habitat." A wave of murmurs rolled through onlookers. Some exhaled relief, hopeful this would restore peace. Others remained uneasy, fearing sedation gone wrong or an enraged reaction from a cornered wolf. Corwin, his face flushed in the cold, barked a retort. "He belongs in the wild, or not at all. I say put him down. No one can guarantee our safety otherwise." A few protesters murmured agreement, though their resolve flickered under the scrutiny of Miss Hawkins's camera lens. Lily's father confronted Corwin, his tone low but charged. "Killing him solves nothing. He's no menace. He's lost and grieving." Corwin sneered but said nothing more, perhaps sensing the crowd's shifting mood. That evening, as darkness cloaked the cemetery once more, Lily's father joined Tobias and a few neighbors for their usual night watch. They built a small, discreet fire near the gates, ensuring no rowdy group tried to chase Silver away under the cover of night. Despite the protests, a handful of villagers, softened by the wolf's devotion, came bearing thermoses of hot cocoa and blankets to share with the watchers. An unusual camaraderie formed among them, individuals who, days prior, barely spoke or disagreed fervently on the wolf's fate. They passed the hours telling stories of Agatha's kindness, recollecting how she once nursed an abandoned foal or offered shelter to travelers in a raging storm. In each memory, they glimpsed a reflection of the love she'd shown Silver. Back at the cabin, Lily and Miss Hawkins prepared for the sanctuary team's arrival. Dr. Braxton planned to oversee sedation, ensuring minimal stress on Silver's exhausted body. Lily alternated between sorrow that Silver might be taken far away and relief that the wolf wouldn't slowly starve at the grave. She confided in Miss Hawkins, "If he lives at the sanctuary, at least he'll have a chance to heal. But will he ever forgive us for moving him?" Miss Hawkins gave a gentle shrug, her eyes kind. "Animals have their own way of understanding. Sometimes, the greatest kindness is saving them from their own despair, even if they don't see it at first." But not all shared that hopeful perspective. Gideon, sensing a final chance to prove himself, fumed at the looming sanctuary operation. Rumors suggested he might attempt one last midnight snatch, capturing Silver with his own equipment to sell or claim a reward. This rumor spurred Lily's father to quietly recruit more neighbors for an overnight guard, determined to prevent any foul play. Sen, the ranger, stayed vigilant, patrolling around the cemetery's perimeter. Every crunch of snow underfoot kept them all on edge, expecting trouble at any moment. As the final hours ticked away before the sanctuary's arrival, the emotional stakes soared. The wolf's health deteriorated, each breath seeming labored. Lily, near tears, noticed a fresh tremor in Silver's legs, as though standing upright had become a monumental effort. The father knelt beside them, pressing a canteen of warm broth to the wolf's muzzle. For the first time in days, Silver lapped at it weakly, a faint glimmer of acceptance shining in his eyes. The watchers, witnessing the fragile scene, exchanged relieved glances. Maybe the wolf sensed help was coming. Late that night, starlight gleamed on gravestones. The watchers huddled around a lantern, forging a last line of defense against either misguided protesters or opportunistic poachers. Each face reflected tension but also a quiet resolve. In the distance, a lone coyote's yip drifted across the snow, and Lily wondered if Silver longed to answer that call, to rejoin the wild. She knew he ached for it. Thus, with dawn poised to bring the sanctuary's professionals and a final verdict, the town braced for the climax. Would Silver consent to sedation and transport, or would his last vestige of feral spirit resist, risking a tragic outcome? In the hush of the frosty cemetery, standing between sorrow and salvation, each character awaited the decisive moment, hearts pounding with a mix of dread and hope. The unspoken question lingered in every frosted breath: would this end in a quiet rescue, or an irrevocable loss? Morning arrived in a blaze of pink and gold clouds, the sun peering over the snowy horizon as if to bear witness to the final act of the wolf's vigil. The sanctuary team was due to arrive at noon, and the entire town seemed to hold its breath in anticipation. A hush enveloped the cemetery, broken only by the crunch of boots on ice as Lily, her father, and a small group of neighbors made their way to the site. Beyond the gate, Silver lay motionless against Agatha's grave, his once majestic form looking frail in the crisp light. Lily's eyes watered at the sight. The wolf's breaths were shallow, each exhale fogging the frosty air. He had weathered weeks of mourning and hunger, and it showed. Though she approached with caution, carrying warm broth, the wolf scarcely lifted his head. A soft whine escaped him, as if acknowledging her presence without the energy to react further. Meanwhile, Dana Clean arrived with Sen and another ranger, reviewing last-minute logistics for the sanctuary transfer. They planned to sedate Silver gently, then load him onto a specialized transport van. Dr. Braxton, prepared with sedatives that minimized risk, clutched her medical bag, her face grim but resolved. "It's our best chance," she reminded everyone, her voice carrying a note of reassurance. "He can't survive this vigil much longer. This is mercy." Yet, the tension in the air hinted at possible interference. Gideon, the self-proclaimed wolf expert, still loitered in the area, visibly disgruntled at being sidelined. Corwin's faction had also gathered at a distance, wearing faces of distrust. And Lily, trembling with a mixture of relief and sorrow, stood close to her father, uncertain how the morning's events would unfold. Each faction, those who favored rescue, those who demanded Silver's removal, and those who harbored darker intentions, seemed poised for a final confrontation. Shortly before noon, the sanctuary team's van pulled up near the cemetery. Two carried handlers emerged, clad in thick winter jackets, their gear rattling softly, tranquilizer darts, blankets, and a collapsible stretcher. Surveying the scene, they exchanged meaningful glances. It was clear this was no ordinary rescue. They introduced themselves to Dana and Dr. Braxton, who promptly explained the scenario in lowered voices. Lily hovered, listening, her heart pounding each time she heard the word sedate. Finally, the handlers approached Lily and her father. One knelt down to speak at eye level, offering a kind smile. "We promise to be gentle," he said. "We've done this before with traumatized wolves. Minimizing stress is key." Lily nodded, tears brimming. "He's been through so much," she whispered. "Please don't hurt him." The handler's gaze flicked to Silver's trembling form. "We'll do our best." With the plan set, Dr. Braxton readied a syringe of sedation, explaining that they'd first attempt a mild dose to calm the wolf. If he allowed Lily or her father near, they could administer the injection discreetly. If he resisted, the handlers would use a dart gun from a safe distance. The father hesitated, recalling how the wolf had steadfastly guarded Agatha. Would it see sedation as a final betrayal? Yet, a glance at Lily's worried face steeled his resolve. Any risk of misunderstanding was worth saving the wolf's life. Slowly, they advanced on the grave. The father led, Lily close behind, carrying a chunk of cooked meat in hopes Silver might eat. The handlers and Dr. Braxton followed at a measured distance, tranquilizer at the ready. Sensen and Dana Clean stayed by the gate, watching carefully, prepared to intervene if Gideon or Corwin's followers attempted to disrupt the procedure. Silver stirred as they drew near, lifting his heavy head to peer at Lily. She knelt, her heart in her throat. "It's okay," she murmured, her voice quavering. Gently, she offered the meat. The wolf sniffed, then let out a low whine but did not pull away. In that fleeting moment, Lily's father motioned Dr. Braxton forward, his hands shaking slightly. The vet knelt on the opposite side, syringe hidden in her coat sleeve. As Lily stroked the wolf's fur, whispering comforting words, Dr. Braxton administered the sedative with a swift, practiced motion, hardly more than a pinprick. Silver stiffened, letting out a pained whimper but did not lash out. Lily's chest constricted at the sound. Part of her screamed this was betrayal, but she swallowed her guilt, knowing it was for Silver's survival. The wolf trembled, confusion flickering in his golden eyes as the sedative took hold. In the hush, the small group waited. Gradually, Silver's limbs relaxed, his eyelids drooping. With Dr. Braxton's nod, the sanctuary handlers moved in. They carefully slid a stretcher beside the wolf, speaking in low, soothing tones to maintain calm. Lily's father, his arms taut with emotion, assisted them in lifting Silver's inert but still breathing form onto the canvas. Lily, tears cascading down her cheeks, held the wolf's muzzle one final time, her mind swirling with memories of how she'd witnessed his unyielding devotion. The moment bristled with emotional intensity as watchers from the town, some siding with relief, others staring with lingering skepticism, observed the scene. Gideon, lurking at the edge, scowled but didn't dare interfere. Corwin's group stood silent, confronted by the raw compassion unfolding before them. Miss Hawkins captured each second on her camera, Lily's tear-streaked face, the father's trembling grip, the handler's careful precision, and the drooping wolf, still heartbreakingly loyal even in sedation. As they carried Silver toward the waiting van, an unexpected hush fell over the cemetery. It was as though even the wind paused to bear witness. The father helped set the stretcher inside, laying the wolf gently on soft bedding provided by the sanctuary team. Lily hovered at the threshold, reluctant to let go. One of the handlers placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "He'll need time," they promised. "But we'll do everything possible to help him heal." Lily merely nodded, tears glistening in the pale daylight. Then came the final confrontation of sorts, a pang of collective silence as the van's doors closed, Silver's immense form now out of sight. For a breathless instant, no one moved, torn between gratitude and sorrow that the wolf's vigil had ended in sedation rather than a peaceful departure on his own terms. Yet, for all the debates, the heartbreak, and the fear, a sense of profound relief cascaded through Lily and her father. The threat of vigilantes, the looming hunger, the dismal possibility of the wolf dying at Agatha's grave, all had been averted. As the van rumbled away from the cemetery, snow swirling in its wake, Lily watched until it vanished from sight. Her father gently steered her toward the grave, where a single paw print, Silver's last physical trace, remained embossed in the snow. Lily sank to her knees, pressing a trembling hand over the imprint. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice hitching. It felt like a farewell to both Agatha and the wolf's raw sorrow. The father knelt beside her, pulling her into a hug. In the hush of that moment, an unspoken understanding passed between them. They had witnessed a love so pure it transcended species, and even death. Whether Silver's future lay in returning to the wild or adapting to sanctuary life, the miracle of his devotion would linger in their hearts, and the hearts of all who'd witnessed it. The story of Agatha and Silver, the wolf who refused to leave her side, became a legend in the village and beyond. It was a tale of love that transcended the boundaries of species, a bond so profound that it moved even the most skeptical hearts. In the months that followed Silver's final farewell at Agatha's grave, the village underwent a quiet transformation. The once divided community found common ground in the shared experience of witnessing something extraordinary. The plaque at Agatha's grave became a symbol of unity, a reminder that compassion and loyalty could bridge even the widest divides. Lily, now older and wiser, often visited the sanctuary where Silver had found a new home. Each time she saw him, stronger, healthier, and more at peace, she felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The wolf who had once been a symbol of grief and fear had become a beacon of hope and resilience. Silver, though no longer bound to Agatha's grave, carried her memory in his every step. He thrived among his new pack, his howls no longer mournful but filled with the wild, untamed spirit of the forest. Yet, those who knew his story could still see the quiet dignity in his eyes, a testament to the love he had shared with the old woman who had saved him. For Lily, the journey had been life-changing. She had learned that love, in its purest form, could heal even the deepest wounds. She often spoke of Silver and Agatha to her friends, ensuring that their story would not be forgotten. As the seasons turned, the village grew quieter, but the lessons of the past remained. The bond between Agatha and Silver became a parable, told to children and newcomers alike, a reminder that kindness and loyalty could transform even the most unlikely relationships. And so, the story of the wolf and the woman who loved him lived on, not just in the village but in the hearts of all who heard it. It was a story of love, loss, and the enduring power of connection, a story that proved, beyond doubt, that even in the wildest of hearts, there is room for love.